MyFantasySportsTalk.com.
Welcome back, guys. Did you forget about us? I hope you didn't. We're back in full effect. We were taking a little bit of a break, gearing up and saving all of our energy for football season, because football season is in full effect now. I'm spending my Friday nights on the high school gridiron. We got college football going on Saturdays, and the NFL is now here. In week one, I probably watch more week one football. I watch pretty much every game this week. So I'm so glad football is here in full effect. The NFL did not let us down with several surprises and in results and just exciting football, exciting in several different ways for a lot of us. And for some of us, not so much. But we're going to get into all that and recap week one in the NFL, talk about some fantasy players, some impacts, and talk about some overreactions we may have saw in week one. So glad you're with us. My Fantasy Podcast from MyFantasySportsTalk.com. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Reed. My co-host is the editor-in-chief, the president, the head honcho of this whole MFST shindig. He's Dan Shaw. How you been, Dan?
Well, that's a nice greeting to come into. I've been good. Football season, obviously a big time in my life. Today marks 1 month until the big I do for myself. So that's every time I think about it, it's coming closer and closer. So that's been taking up a lot of my time as well. But I've been well.
I thought about that today, Dan. I didn't realize it's exactly 1 month, but I thought about that day. I'm like, man, we're getting close because, we're already halfway through September. And sure enough, exactly 30 days. Dan is going to say I do. And we may have another co-host on the podcast. I don't know what's going to happen here when it's a split household like that. So we may have rule changes to the podcast. We may be recording at different times. We may be airing at different times. We may have to get a second seat next to Dan. I don't know, but we'll all work it out in the Schalk household. It'll be glorious. We're also joined today by our man from Below, who probably wants to stay on the D-Lo this week. And rumor is he may just move to Baltimore. He's been threatening. I've heard rumors that he's threatening to just move to Baltimore altogether. He's done. He's throwing his hands up. But you do have reason to be excited, Ryan Thomas of the Thomas Take podcast, I believe, because your guy is finally going to get his chance. Let's just reset. We're going to hit the reset button like it's old Nintendo, like it's 8-bit Nintendo NES. Hit the reset button, and we'll start all over in Buffalo.
That is what is taking place at One Bills Drive. The Bills are starting Josh Allen. The Josh Allen era starts now. We put that debacle that was last week in the rearview mirror, and we roll with Josh Allen, the present and the future. How about that?
So from what you saw with the Baltimore game, that's not the only problem, though. I mean, that's not going to solve a lot.
No, that's not the only problem. And I fear that being that was week one, we see teams go head-to-head, and sometimes we see upsets. We see teams, these teams aren't really – they fully don't have their feet wet yet. I think there could be more problems to come for the Bills, unfortunately. For my Buffalo Bills, the offensive line, defensive line, really all three phases of the game.
What was the final score again? Baltimore. I don't even remember.
47-3.
Yeah.
So, yep. At one point, it was 7-0. So just let that sink in.
A lot of games start out that way, Ryan.
Right.
And then it all plays out.
Right.
So
it was a tough one.
But here's my problem, or I just not necessarily a problem we don't know yet, but it's going to be interesting, and it could cause a dilemma because the team is not very good. Like you said, offensive, defensive line, just not much going on. Is this going to reflect negatively 3 weeks down the road on Josh Allen when the team is still losing, not looking good? Are fans going to lose faith in him and be like, we got to draft a quarterback again? I mean, I don't want it to come to that, I mean, give the kid, even Peterman, not thrown into a great situation, but let's, I hope the kid gives time, they give him time, because I think Allen is going to be really good for you guys.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's a topic that I talked about on my podcast today, actually, earlier this afternoon. I talked about how, Josh Allen's going to be the starter, but if things don't go according to plan, which they probably won't, I don't see the Buffalo Bills winning too many games this year. What fans have to realize is the one good thing about Josh Allen playing right now is that he's going to get experience heading into 2019, where the Bills' current salary cap situation is probably the worst salary cap situation in the league. But luckily, it only works for 2018. It only handicaps them for 2018, 2019. They get a lot of money coming back to them. So hopefully they're able to spend that money wisely, use their draft picks wisely. Being that they have so many needs, I hope we don't see them trade up in the 2019 NFL draft because there's so many needs on this team that they need to land all the picks that they can.
Something just struck me, guys. All three of our teams lost this week. I don't know. I know it hurts you, Brian, because I watch your podcast, man. You were so heavily invested in the Buffalo Bills. Bless your heart, bless you. But Dan also with the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't know what Dan expected. Me with the Tennessee Titans, I'm just kind of, we'll see what happens. But I'm not particularly confident in Mike Vrabel. I'm not particularly confident in Marcus Mariota, and I think we kind of saw all that come to fruition in a loss that they probably shouldn't have lost in Miami, although horrible conditions. But coming off a playoff season where you actually won a playoff game, my expectations for the Tennessee Titans are not great for the future. And I don't know how Dan feels about the Dallas Cowboys, but his Dallas Cowboys just kind of did nothing in Carolina this past weekend. So how's things in Dallas, Dan? What's your outlook and how you feel about week one for your Cowboys?
I could sum it up in 4 words. I hate Dak Prescott.
It's got to that point, huh?
Yeah, year 3. This is year 3. I had high expectations. It's been tough for me just because I haven't given Dak a fair shake, since he took over for Tony. I was a big Romo fan, believer, still am. I think he can come down to the booth right now and play better on the field than Dak could the way he did against Carolina. But, I was shocked. He was – I put on social media – he just loves throwing to feet, and feet can't catch. And he was coming up short pass after pass. It was bad to watch. It reminded me of when I was younger watching Chad Hutchinson play for the quarterback for the Cowboys, and it was a short clip of it, but it wasn't a large sample size. But Dak looked, dreadful out there. Defense looked good. I was happy with the way the defense played. Defensive line, DeMarcus Lawrence was a beast. The linebackers are talented with Van Der Esch, the rookie, Sean Lee, Jalen Smith. They have talent, and the secondary played out of their mind. So I was happy with the defense. It's just offensively we couldn't do anything, and when defenses are going to stack the box and make Dak beat them. There was 10 in the box at times. They were just man covering every single receiver. They didn't put a safety over top. The safety was up front at the line of scrimmage. Shaq Thompson, who is kind of that linebacker safety hybrid, he was up blitzing basically every play. So the running game wasn't there, and Dak couldn't beat him with his arm. And
that's what I was going to say, Dan. There's 2 points I want to make there. Number one is what I said when we did our Pick'ems piece about how I feel about the Dallas Cowboys is that year 3, the more time and the more film gets out on Dak Prescott, the less effective he's going to be. I truly believe that. I love Dak. He's a great guy. I saw him in Mississippi State. He's just a superstar, and nothing about that changes. But I don't. The more I think he hit the NFL with a wow factor, an impact factor that we don't know how to play this guy yet, but they figured it out. And I'm not sure he's ever going to be that true pocket passer. So I think the more time, the more film gets out on Dak Prescott, the less effective he's going to be, and that will continue to be the way throughout time. The second part of that is the Ezekiel Elliott factor. Is why I was high on Zeke because I like the offensive line. I know they're going to feed him so much, but I truly believe that Dallas is going to be down in a lot of games this year. And when they do stack the box like that, if you're a Ezekiel Elliott owner, then you're not going to be happy about the way this Cowboys offense plays out this year.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely worrisome. I didn't expect to see what I saw on Sunday from the Dallas offense. Their line, obviously without Travis Frederick, you don't know if he's going to return. That's a big hit. Joe Looney's a good backup to have on your team that can fill in, but to ask him to start at center, it's not something that he's accustomed to. And the Carolina defensive line, I mean, with Kawan Short and Julius Peppers was still making plays. I mean, they had some talent up front, so Dallas isn't going to see that type of defense week in, week out. But they got to show that they can dominate the line of scrimmage, and they didn't do that week one. And just Dak one more time. When he played as a rookie, I scout the NFL draft pretty heavily, and I didn't have a good grade on him. I didn't think he was an NFL quarterback. I thought he was wildly inaccurate. And then he came out as a rookie, and he actually looked good. But he was given a lot of time. He obviously that running game was established every game.
He was figuring the game out as defenses were figuring it out too. So he had success.
But his accuracy has just completely gone away. I mean, there's times when he wasn't even being pressured and he was just missing wide open receivers. And the receivers probably got a lot of blame, but they were open at times. And the only one that Dak could hit, we were talking about it on Sunday, Brandon, is Cole Beasley. And it's because he's so damn short. It actually worked in his favor, those ankle passes. So I need to see more games from him this year to fully hate him the way I did after week one, but it's not a good start.
So let me ask you, as far as the Cowboys personnel and coaching staff, is it potentially there to make Dak a better pocket passer, a better quarterback? Is there going to have to be a change made schematically or personnel wise to make this guy a better quarterback, or is it just going to have to be a situation where you play this year and you look for a contingency plan?
I'm always in the neighborhood of wanting continuity and keeping your coaching staff together. And Dallas has actually done that. They've, Jason Garrett has been there for years.
And do you like him? Just I don't know if I ever asked you, but how do you feel about him right now? Do you like him as a coach?
I'm souring on him quickly. I was always okay with it. I thought he did a decent job.
Seems like he's Jones's golden boy. It seems like Garrett is the golden boy.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of Rod Marinelli over everybody else on that staff. I think what he does with such little talent on defense over the past few years has really stood out to me. He gets his players to really play. But offensively, I mean, it looked bland on Sunday. They were supposed to get Tavon Austin involved constantly in the offense. I think he was on the field for a total of like 5 or 6 plays total throughout the game, and the offense just it was stagnant. So I like the continuity that we've had, but they haven't gotten it done lately. So whether it's a change at head coach, offensive coordinator with Scott Linehan, I mean, I think if they're going to be on thin ice if they don't produce a playoff berth this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a clean house after the season if they do miss the playoffs. But that's what I like with the Cowboys, because I know they can attract the coaches, and there's nobody going to be turning them down the way Buffalo gets turned down constantly by high profile coaches. But I'm just worried that what type of decision is Jerry and company going to make, because with head coaches, they don't always go with who they should, or who I guess they should go with, or that big name coach. They want to get that kind of puppet master the way they can get Garrett to work behind the scenes in favor of the Joneses. So
let's talk about new head coaches real quickly. And 2 in mind, Mike Vrabel, who I touched on with the Tennessee Titans, and Matt Patricia with the Detroit Lions. What grade would you give those guys, Dan?
Well, I don't know if you saw this. All new debut coaches lost their first week, 0-7. So those two, I mean, Vrabel, they were at least in the game. Patricia just looked lost.
It was nasty conditions too with Tennessee. If you want to give them a pass for that, I guess, but.
Yep, and but with Patricia, I don't know if you watched the broadcast, but they kept showing him, just him, and he was just like,
he looked confused. He looked confused and pissed. He looked like a guy in the billiards bar that was ready to beat someone's ass.
He just looked out of his league, and you don't expect to see that from a Bill Belichick disciple like that. But he was not ready. He was not
the thing
prepared.
about the Belichick disciples? The Bill Belichick
Yeah,
disciple coaches have done horrible in the NFL.
You expect them to at least have some semblance of a game plan where a rookie quarterback isn't going to put 48 points up on you in his first game ever. I mean, I know Darnold didn't do everything, but he did look like a veteran out there in his first game after that first pass.
So, so what you kind of saw, it unraveled a lot quicker for Detroit and Matt Stafford than it did for Tennessee. But what you're seeing there is kind of way I felt about Tennessee going when they made the hire for Mike Vrabel. What did I tell you, Dan? What was my famous quote there?
Bonehead ex-linebacker.
Yeah, to run an offense in a critical year offensively for your quarterback specifically. Yeah. Now, I guess Matt LaFleur had success, but something is still not clicking. And I would have liked to see a more offensive-minded hire there in Tennessee. And I don't know. We'll see. My expectations are not very great this year. So we'll see. But so, Ryan, what kind of stuck out to you? What do you, outside of your Buffalo Bills topic, what kind of stuck out to you from week one that you want to talk about or hash out?
I got to say, a storyline that's not really being talked about enough with the Detroit Jets game is that Jets defense. I thought the Jets defense looked completely different from last year.
Number one scoring defense in fantasy in our league anyway.
Right. And guys like Jamal Adams, that dude is going to be a cornerstone on that defense for a long time. Some other things I liked, I stayed up late Monday night. I wanted to tune into the John Gruden show, and that was a very good game for Oakland at the start. But the Rams defense as well. I think those two defenses might end up being, by the end of the year, they might be two of the top defenses in the league. Matt Stafford and Sam Darnold looked like the veteran. And then you go to the Rams side of it. Once their defense started clicking against the Raiders, their offense just exploded. So I'm excited to see how those defenses do as the season wears on, the Jets and the Rams.
What I kept thinking watching that Oakland and Rams game late Monday night is I kept thinking about the Chicago and Green Bay game. Like, folks, this ain't over. Don't let this halftime score fool you. It is not over. And the Rams did dominate from there on out. I'm in favor of the Rams D this year. As far as the fans in Oakland booing John Gruden or just the team in general, I can understand that because you got to imagine, how do you feel if you're Oakland fans? Because you get Chucky, you get John Gruden, you get a head coach, but guess what? You only got him for 2 years and the team is bouncing. Okay, so it's kind of like win now, do something now, and if it ain't getting done, I don't care if it's week one or not. Then boo, because why should they care? Plus, they're one of the more obnoxious fan bases as it is outside of Philadelphia, who is booing the Super Bowl champs on the night they got their rings, by the way, too. But you got that. And then also the Martavis Bryant situation. I heard that they're probably going to re-sign him if they haven't already. So they cut him only to re-sign him. So they're needing help there. A lot going on. And Aaron Rodgers, what he did Sunday night, I thought we were talking on the MFSD message board, I thought it'd be 2 weeks. Some guys were saying, maybe the season. It looked bad. He was carted off for Pete's sake. Okay. But he came back and won the game. Ended up with 27 fantasy points in our league. So, just an amazing first week. And I did watch a lot of it. So, Dan, what else you want to add to it as far as just wrapping up week one? What else? Surprises, shocks, whatever. Pittsburgh, Cleveland played to a tie, so Cleveland didn't lose.
Yeah, one thing the Bills should have never got rid of Ryan Fitzpatrick, as he had his best game ever as a pro. So obviously the Bills should have built around Fitzpatrick and Fitz franchise and watch him lead him to glory. But instead, he's over in Tampa lighting up the Saints defense that was actually good last year and was supposed to be even better this year. And they look terrible, which is good for my fantasy team because that means I'm going to have Drew Brees throwing nonstop.
That is good. But Ryan Fitzpatrick has produced everywhere he's gone. I'm a witness to that. He's just produced. I mean, I don't know. He just gets the NFL game. He is a journeyman, and he produces. But I was looking at our MFST fantasy league this week, and 6 of the top 12 fantasy producers this week came from that game. Tampa Bay and New Orleans. They all came from that game. Alvin Kamara had a great game. Drew Brees had a great game. Mike Evans had a great game. All those guys are on your team, aren't they, Dan? Or at least I know 2 of them.
Yeah, you're just naming off my team. Oh, man. I feel good.
Dan had a great week, although he wasn't the top scorer of the league, guys. I'm talking to all you guys. DDT, Dylan Davis, Tirado, Casey Birch, Malachi David, all you guys listening from myfantasysportstalk.com. Told you I had a beast of a team. Look at that. Look at that. 147. 147.
We're up here with our team, and then you got to go, ooh, that's where the Thomas take is. That's hide your face.
I'll call my shot right now and call out the mediocre Baltimore Ravens. So if the Ravens are mediocre, that means Buffalo is just downright awful. But Thomas Samuel Ball is going to get a Thomas take beatdown this week.
You got to score more than 74 points or whatever you scored. It was not good.
It was not a good week. Matt Ryan, he's got to redeem himself.
Dude, I doubled your score. It's not a good showing. Not a good showing. I don't know. We got some time. You better be involved in some of these trade offers with the Purtons and Casey Birch. Casey Birch and the Purtons, they're trade machines. They're hungry for it. So go after their talent.
If Nick Purtons would have traded me David Johnson for nothing, I would have been pretty thankful for that too.
Yep.
Hey, don't comment. I'll just sit back and watch. Take me to glory again. Because
Kenyon Drake,
I won last year.
Kenyon Drake's an RB2 to Frank Gore right now.
That's for the next show.
But will that continue? I don't know, man. I don't know. But we're going to drop another podcast. We're going to answer you guys' mailbag questions. So you're seeing this one. Stay tuned for the next podcast. We'll be dropping probably Saturday. Want to get you guys mailbag questions in and answer as much of them as we can. We're going to hear from our guy, Nick Purtons. But so I've kind of hit on all the surprises I want to talk about. I mean, what do y'all think about? You hadn't really talked, Ryan. What about that Pittsburgh-Cleveland game? I want to get your feeling in it. Is Cleveland really going to step up and play at a fairly competitive level this year? Or did Pittsburgh just have a horrible game in a slop fest where they committed 6 turnovers to Cleveland's 1? I mean, how do you see that? It was a tie. What happened?
It was a tie. It was a 21-21 game. Had Baker Mayfield been in, I think Cleveland would have won that game. Tyrod Taylor, 15 of 40, 197 yards and a touchdown. The yards for Tyrod Taylor, 197 yards for Tyrod Taylor is like a Drew Brees, 280, 290 to 280 to 300.
But he did add about 70 or so on the ground too, didn't he?
On the ground, right. But I think if Baker Mayfield was in that game, and I'm not the biggest Baker Mayfield guy, but I think Cleveland would have had a much more consistent passing attack. There was also a very odd miscommunication, according to Hugh Jackson, in regards to Josh Gordon's playing time. They said that he played too much, that they didn't want him to play that many snaps, but there was a miscommunication as far as how long he was in the game. Cleveland is just one of those teams that they just can't get out of their own way. As much as their defense, I think their defense is extremely impressive. Their front 7, Myles Garrett, I think he's the pass rusher of the future. I think he should be as highly rated as J.J. Watt ever has been or ever will be. This guy is going to take over the defensive end spot for the NFL. He's one of the faces of the league, in my opinion. But their offense with Tyrod Taylor, I'm just not sold on the Browns, making the playoffs or being a contender. I think Baker Mayfield steps in for Tyrod at some point this season.
I can agree with that. Because Baker Mayfield has looked sharp through Hard Knocks, through early training camp, through preseason games. He's just looked sharp. He's looked like probably the man of the future and probably worth the number 1 pick. So I don't think they screwed it up in that regard. But let's face it, they still tied with Pittsburgh while Big Ben committed 5 total turnovers. The team committed 6, and they still couldn't beat Pittsburgh. So that's why I'm just kind of looking at this a different way. I think they will be more competitive. They're going to be better than last year, which to me means 4 or 5 wins. I'm sticking with that. Pittsburgh played just a horrible game. They need to get it together, and Le'Veon Bell was sitting back laughing. If Pittsburgh would have lost that game, Le'Veon Bell really probably would have been signing a check right now. So we'll see how that plays out. But something was missing. Maybe it's Le'Veon Bell, maybe it's not. Maybe Big Ben is shedding that weight. he shed some of his Big Ben status. I don't know. But 6 turnovers to Cleveland's 1 is not going to get it done. I'm not totally convinced that was all Cleveland's defense. I think weather had something to do with that. Just week one flukiness. I don't know, but I don't think I wouldn't overreact to Cleveland tying and being a lot more competitive this year. I don't know how'd you see that game, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think weather conditions also played a factor in some of the numbers that you guys are talking about. But that aside, I mean, I think both teams played rough. I mean, the Cleveland defense stepped up. Their offense didn't, there were factors on both sides of why they tied. But I think week 2 is going to be more of an outlier of how Cleveland will perform because they are playing that New Orleans Saints defense that, just got ripped apart by Tampa Bay. So if you're going to find out if Tyrod is the guy this year for Cleveland, depending on how he does against that defense, in my eyes. Play Josh Gordon this week.
Are you? You have him.
Yes. Yeah, I think I am.
You're going to play him. You're going to play him at the flex this week?
No, as my wide receiver too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Good to know because I have him in a couple other leagues. We'll see. All right. So that does it as far as in-game action. Let's just talk about some of the fantasy performers this week. As Dan mentioned before, we talked about Ryan Fitzpatrick just went off. He was the overall leading scorer in our league this week with, I believe, 52 fantasy points. That's what he had, 52 fantasy points. So do not expect that to continue, especially because they are going against Philadelphia this coming week. And we didn't talk about that. I believe that the Philadelphia-Atlanta game on Thursday night to kick off the season could be a preview of the NFC Championship. I know it was an 18-12 game, but that is what the NFC Championship game probably should look like with some good defenses. And I think Atlanta's defense is improved to hold this defending Super Bowl champs to only 18 points. Atlanta's problem is just going to be play calling. I mean, how many times were they stopped inside the 5? Just play calling, and they had the same problem in the red zone last year. So they got to work that out. But let's talk about fantasy real quick. Fitzpatrick, Tyreek Hill went off. James Conner, Deshaun Jackson out of nowhere, Randall Cobb out of nowhere. He's still got some left in the tank. And Saquon Barkley had a really good rookie debut as far as fantasy point wise. So fantasy performers, what do we think, Dan? Anything shock you? Someone to look out for this particular year, or did someone kind of let you down? And I don't know, based on team scheme or just fantasy production, what happened?
Well, a guy that Ryan has that I've been hyping up all off season is George Kittle. He was on Ryan's bench, which is a good fantasy owner decision there. But yeah, I'm high on George Kittle. I think he's going to be one of the main targets for Jimmy G, and he ripped off 90 yards against a Vikings defense that is pretty darn impressive. So I think you're going to see more of that. He was probably a hot waiver wire addition this week. But he was a guy that I've had my eye on in a lot of leagues, and I even offered Ryan Thomas a trade. He said he would only take Josh Gordon for him, so let me offer this to you right now, Ryan. Josh Gordon for George Kittle. Let's do it. Straight up.
You send it.
Ryan's got to throw in a kicker too, though, because Dan is total. He's on his second kicker, and he's down 2 points this year from the kicking position.
I always go with the Cowboys kickers, and for some reason they cut the second best one in NFL history, so I still can't get that.
Did he sign yet? I heard the Jets were this close to signing him. Did he sign?
Yep, nope, free agent. It's a shame.
Okay, so Dan Bailey's out there, and I don't know who the bum you picked up was, but he got you negative too. So, fantasy production, what's going on, Ryan?
I said the last time I was on this show, I said buy low. You made a great hashtag for me. I can't remember what it was word for word, but It was go with the flow. I think it was go with the flow, buy low, and be low. I bought low on quarterbacks. I drafted Matt Ryan, maybe one in the 120s, I want to say. If I'm not mistaken, I thought I drafted him that late. And, I mean, the play calling in Atlanta, I think that's really the key to my fantasy season in the MFST league. If Matt Ryan is not getting me 17 to 20 points a week.
What did I tell you, Ryan? I told you he's going to frustrate the hell out of you.
I'm trying in another league. I get a 10-team league. I have Alex Smith, who I'm starting this week, and I'm benching Matt Ryan. This week, I did pick up in the MFST league. I picked up Sam Darnold. I'm hoping maybe he can catch the Carson Wentz lightning in a bottle rookie magic, which so far so good. Maybe he's my starter as the season wears on. Maybe we'll see.
You would think Matt Ryan with the weapons and a pretty wide open offense like they have, like he would be a fantasy producer, but he throws 1 or 2 picks a game. He just misses throws. They have horrible play calling in the fourth quarter and in the red zone. It just never, ever just completely clicks. Now, Julio Jones has his games, but for Matt Ryan, he hovers around that 18-point margin. If he has a 30-point game, you had a great game and probably the best that Matt Ryan is going to have all season long. As far as fantasy quarterbacks this year, guys, maybe I'm out of line here. Maybe I'm not too far off, but let me get your take on this, Dan. I believe Patrick Mahomes could possibly be the best fantasy producing quarterback in the league this year.
I'm going to go ahead and say no to that, but I am high on Mahomes. He was my number 1 quarterback coming out of the draft in 2017. I think he's a gunslinger. I called him the next Tony Romo, which is high praise coming from me. So I'm a definite believer in Mahomes. But, one thing that was in our draft guide that we put out, they have the 32nd strength of schedule against the pass. So I think you're going to see that ultimately start to kind of even out. You're going to see Kareem Hunt a little bit more involved. For some reason, Andy Reid just occasionally hates running the football. And until the last 2 series or something, Kareem Hunt had about 10 touches. It's not going to happen every single week. Mahomes is good. He's going to put up numbers. Number 1 fantasy quarterback, I don't think that's going to happen. Top 10? Yeah, I can see that.
I would say top 5 at least.
I think top 5 through the fact that he's got players that can create opportunities. Guys like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Hunt, Sammy Watkins. I know, Dan, he is an injury-prone player, but he's got guys around him that can make opportunities. I think Mahomes could have a similar season to what Deshaun Watson did in that stretch run that he had last year. Just hopefully he stays healthy.
I just think he's solid. I think he's the guy. They obviously shipped Alex Smith out of town, and from the moment he landed in Kansas City, it just seemed like that they fell in love with him, and he was going to be the guy. And Week 1 performance did not let me down. He probably finished with us probably like 10th in our league in total fantasy production with 31 points. So. I mean, I think he's going to be really good. I would definitely say top 5. I'm willing to go that high for sure, guaranteed, because I like the way he looks and the weapons he has around him. So what else fantasy-wise? Like I said, 6 of the top 12 guys in our league were from that Tampa Bay New Orleans matchup, so things are a little bit skewed that way. Case Keenum in Denver. Emmanuel Sanders is up there. He scored a lot of points. And Phillip Lindsay was probably the hottest waiver wire pickup this week, guys. Is that right? I think he was the first off our board anyway.
Ex-Colorado Buffalo representing there. So I like Lindsay. I grabbed him in a couple dynasty leagues this year. I didn't expect him to have such a role week 1, but I think he's the best back in that backfield. You can read my draft profile on him when I gave him a day 2 grade in the NFL draft, and he went undrafted. So I've been hyping him up. I've watched all 4 years at Colorado. He was only behind Rashaan Salam in Colorado rushing yard history. And he was the leader of that team. Not only is he a great running back, but he is his work ethic and his leadership ability set him apart from everybody else. Big fan of Phillip Lindsay.
Ryan, were you targeting anybody this week to pick up, or did you pick up anybody? I had to take a look here.
I changed kickers. Stephen Hauschka was my kicker for the Buffalo Bills. I went with, I don't even know who I picked up. You'd have to fill me
Robbie
in on
Gould,
that.
San Francisco.
Robbie Gould. Okay, San Francisco. And Phillip Lindsay was a guy that I was looking at. Unfortunately, I did lose the waiver for his services, being that I have Royce Freeman. I still think Royce Freeman's the lead dog in that backfield. I think he's gonna turn it around. They're gonna split it, but ultimately, I think Royce Freeman's the guy that can share the workload. I think he's gonna get the workload as the season wears on. I see him as similar to not as big, but similar to like a Blunt type. To where as the season wears on, I think he's gonna get some solid weeks in. A guy that I really like. For all the Melvin Gordon owners out there is Austin Eckler. I'm very happy that I have him on my bench because whoever has Melvin Gordon, if Melvin Gordon were to ever go down, Eckler's probably one of the top pickups that week, or would be if he's available. And even
that
so,
guy's on this show
with
Dan Shaw, the owner of Melvin Gordon.
even so, even with Melvin Gordon in there, it looked like they're using him in a wide variety of ways in that Chargers offense. So that's a guy that I like. I think people should go out and see if there's an opening there to get him.
And I see Dan and I were battling for the first tight end pickup this week because I need one. Because, okay, first of all, folks, I scored 147. Did I mention that? 147.5 this week. Top producer in the league. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we'll throw another shout out for that. But I've already had Marquise Lee go down before the season even started for the year, gone. And then Greg Olsen again goes down. He's on the IR, so I'm having to find myself a tight end again. And me and Dan were battling for tight ends. So Dan fell for the Will Dissly act. He thinks he's going to be the guy, huh?
Well, it's just kind of like a backup. I think he's my third tight end on my roster. So
you got 3 tight ends on your roster?
Yeah, so I traded away in order to acquire David Johnson. I left myself pretty thin at that tight end position. So I have O.J. Howard, I have Antonio Gates, and now I have Will Dissly. I don't plan to really ever play him. I think that 105 and a touch that he had week 1. It's not going to happen every week. He did it on 3 receptions. But if Nick Vannett goes down, then I think Dissly becomes a must-own type of tight end in fantasy. So why not have him? I had the roster space. Why not go for it?
I've ended up picking up Jesse James. Jonnu Smith with Delaney Walker went out for the year too. So Jonnu Smith was picked up for the Tennessee Titans. I went with Jesse James because it seems like to me, like when I watch Pittsburgh, he's always on the field. He's always active, so I think he'll get targets. So he'll do okay. So I'm never big on the tight end position. It is what it is. So we were kind of battling. So several tight ends were picked up there. As far as our waiver wire, before we wrap this up, guys, the guys who are still available, and this is how little confidence people even have and how much of a fluke people thought that first game was in New Orleans, is Ryan Fitzpatrick is still available in our waiver wire. No one's even trying to pick him up. He scored 52 last week, and he's still sitting on the waiver wire. Other names that are on our waiver wire still currently after the hot Tuesday free agency pickup period is Joe Flacco, Ryan Tannehill, let's skip through some of it. Trubisky's still out there. Dante Pettis of San Francisco. Willie Snead from Baltimore. A few kickers. Jakeem Grant from Miami. Jalen Richard of Oakland, who did get work in that game Monday night. So there's some guys out there. A lot of kickers, a lot of quarterbacks. We'll see how it plays out. A lot of defenses, but there's still some guys out there. So we'll talk more about that in our next podcast when we break down and answer some of your fantasy questions, specifically about trades and free agent pickups and who should I play, this guy or that guy. So that should be entertaining. So last word, though. First of all, and I mentioned you today, Dan, about Dez Bryant possibly coming back home. We saw him with Jerry Jones of all places at a Beyonce concert. What the hell is going on? But is there a possible return into Dallas by Dez, or what's the latest Dez? What do you think is going to happen here? Is it going to be soon? Is it going to drag out? What?
I think we're going to need to see an injury. It's not going to happen in Dallas. I don't see the Joneses swallowing their pride like that and bringing him back. I told you I thought it was a weird, probably an awkward moment that Dez ran into probably a drunk Jerry or A very heavily medicated Jerry out at the, party Beyonce Jay-Z concert. But I don't look too much into it. If they're going to bring anybody back, bring back Tony from the booth. That's what I would really like to see. Or even Jay Witt, show me some how he can catch some ankle passes from Dak if he needs to. But he's going to wait for an injury, basically, I think, to happen.
So good segue there. The last thing I want to talk about before we close out this podcast is the rulings. We see rule changes every single year by the NFL to try to make the game even more safe or shore up some deficiencies or just satisfy some fan clamoring, which is a big part of it for me with the new rule catch, which I love. So we saw the most targeting penalties or roughing quarterback penalties in the league on week 1 since 2001 this past week. What did you think about that, Ryan? Did it seem to be overboard? Did you notice? Is it obvious intentionally that they're calling this or what?
You would have to be, I don't even know what word to say. I mean, you definitely notice it, and it's tough because there's a lot of layers to this onion known as the no contact helmet to helmet rule that the NFL has. I think they had good intentions in putting it in place because we saw players leading with their head, and I can date back to when I was 7 years old playing Pop Warner football. Not to lead with your head, and these guys are professional football athletes that they're trying to get the big hit. They're trying to get on SportsCenter's top 10 for the big hit. And
that's what football's about. You want to take the head off of the guy who has the ball, and a lot of times,
you do.
80% of the time, that's the quarterback.
You do, but things have changed. We know a lot more about head injuries than what we knew, 5, even 10 years ago. No, but I mean, the NFL is trying to cover their what,
right?
And that's really what this comes down to. Roger Goodell's trying to save face. For once in his life as a commissioner, he's trying to save face on an issue that he doesn't want to acknowledge it, but he's going to acknowledge it by bending and changing the rules. I think it's actually going to lead to more injuries, more pauses in action, because we're going to see more players overcompensate and try to make the big hit or try to ease up, and it's not good for the game.
As far as the targeting stuff go low, which is not any better as far as injuries go.
There was a moment a couple years ago where T.J. Ward hit Rob Gronkowski, ended his season, tore his knee up, and that is just as dirty a hit as any helmet-to-helmet hit. Where's the rule change on that? I mean, these guys are human beings. They know what they're getting themselves into. Former Buffalo Bill Andre Reed said it best. He said, if I didn't know what I was getting into, I wouldn't have played. So that's that.
As a player, I would just think I would rather, if I'm an offensive player, a ball carrier, I would rather get hit in the shoulder, or upper body, or even, a head. Head has got to be accidental because no one's going to go for your head intentionally. That's not a good tackling form to begin with. But I want to be hit anywhere but my lower body, in my knees and my legs, because I think that's where the more injuries would come from. So I don't know. But what I did like, Dan, Shaw, because we finally cleared up. I don't know if you guys noticed. Maybe it was just subtle for some folks, but they are not overanalyzing these catches to death now. If it's not, just obviously, like he may have dropped the ball or bobbled the ball, they're not even paying it attention. First down, touchdown, let's move on and play ball. They're not even reviewing them now, and I love that. Did you notice that, Dan?
No, because Dez caught it.
So. Dez started it all. But I really do think the game will speed it up, because there were several times in several games this week when I was watching where I'm thinking, if this was last year, they're reviewing that. They're probably taking 4 minutes to review that catch when it should be just a catch. Let's move on and play football. So I did like that. But did you notice any more like roughing penalties or just things that the NFL are obviously trying to do this year to clean up, injuries or whatever?
Yeah. Roughing the passer, don't even get me started, because, if you hit the quarterback hard, clean but hard, but too hard, you're going to get called. And it always seems to happen at the most inopportune times on a 3rd and long where the defense is about to get off the field and some stupid roughing the passer penalty comes. But yeah, each of the games that I was watching, Dallas got hit with it twice, both on 3rd downs that would have gotten Carolina off the field. One led to what was the winning touchdown. Roughing the passer is one that gets me every time. I just hate that personal foul penalties like this are affecting the game so much.
And it seems to only be getting worse. But as any other NFL season goes, even NBA season, anytime rule changes are like this are made, it dramatically impacts, the first week or so of play, then they start trending down. You'll see this kind of fade a little bit, I believe. Not completely, but we're not going to regress as far as this goes. So you're not going to see them be able to whack the quarterbacks anymore, but I think you're going to see a slack off as the season goes on. Hopefully, we'll see. I'm not in favor of more flags and more stoppage of play. It's football. It is a physical, violent game. As long as they play football, it's going to be that way. So thanks for joining us. This is My Fantasy Podcast. We're back. It is football season. Join us for the next podcast where we do rapid fire answering your mailbag question. I'm going to open up a big mailbag question segment because you guys have been just stuffing the bag for the last month or so. So now that football season is here, we're going to have to answer some of them and break down fantasy scenarios and answer what you want to talk about. So we'll do that. So check out that podcast coming up in just a matter of days over the weekend before week 2 of the NFL. Ryan Thomas, join us for that, man. I want your input. You'll help us answer some of these questions, right?
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll look forward to that from Ryan Thomas and my co-host Dan Chalk. I am Brandon Reed. Thanks for watching. Until next time, see you later. Peace.